afternoon, everyone. I'd like to open this public hearing at 5:40 p.m. Roll call.
Nereida Catu, present.
SB Ochoa, present.
Roberto Zamora, present.
Alda Benavides, present. Dr. Sines, I declare a quorum. Are there any public comments?
We have no public comments.
If there are no public comments, we'll move to item number 4, public hearing to discuss La Joya Independent School District's 2022-2023 budget and 2022 proposed tax rate. Welcome, Mr. Garza, to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Benavides. Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the school board, Superintendent Dr. Science, and members of the community. Today we'll be discussing the proposed budget for the 22-23 school year. All required publications have been made. They were published on June 10th. Our website has been updated with the proposed budget as outlined by House Bill 1. In your packet, we have on page 1, the preliminary property values are $3,391,000,000. The district will not receive actual certified values until July 25th. At that point, we will go through the same process as we're doing now, do another publication, and determine the actual proposed tax rate and come to the board for approval in late August. The current tax rate at this point...
Excuse me, Mr. Garza, do
Yes.
you want the board to look at the presentation in the binder or
In the binder,
in
yes,
the
ma'am.
binder? Okay.
Tell us where you're at.
We're on page 1 on, it looks like it's on your screen. Should be on your screen.
It's, it's page 2.
Oh, it's page 2,
Not-
yes, I'm sorry. It's because it's kind of faded and it's
Yeah, it's in the
difficult
big
to read.
binder.
The copies came out a little faded.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm
on the
sorry.
big binder.
No
It's
wonder,
not this binder.
no
It's
wonder I
not the
couldn't
small
find
binder.
it.
Are we good?
Give us just a second, Mr. Garza.
Yes, ma'am.
It's right after the June 22nd, 2022.
Yes.
Right here. Second page. Yes. We're good.
Okay. On page 1, the preliminary property values are $3,391,000,000. That's the first line. The district will not receive actual certified values until July 25th. At that point, we will go through the same process as we're doing now, do another publication, and determine the actual proposed tax rate and come to the board for approval in late August. The current tax rate at this point is at $1.27, broken down by maintenance and operations of 0.9746 cents and debt service of 0.2954 cents. The M&O tax rate does include disaster pennies of 0.0317 cents. Last year, the governor declared a disaster due to the winter storm Uri, so the district is able to have these disaster pennies added to our local M&O tax rate. If there is no disaster declared this year and the district wants to keep the same tax rate next year, we may need to be discussing for a voter approval tax rate election sometime later this calendar year. The 0.2954 cents on the debt service should generate enough funds to meet our debt service obligations. Based on the preliminary property values and the tax rate, we should have an estimated tax levy of $42,280,000, of which we anticipate a 98% collection rate for budgeting purposes. This will generate $41,435,000 in actual collections, broken down into $31,797,000 in M&O and $9.6 million in debt service. In this budget, we are projecting an average daily attendance of 21,500. The budget includes the following raises: for teachers, librarians, and nurses, $1,500, and for all other employees, a 2% increase from midpoint. In addition, all eligible employees will receive a $2,500 retention stipend. Debt payments from the general fund amounted to $5,226,000, and in the debt service was $21,566,000. The district's share of the health care premiums increased by $63 per month, totaling $756 per year per employee. The workers' compensation rate remained the same at 1%. And listed there, as you can see, are budgeted special projects for the 22-23 school year. Are there any questions on that page? If not, we'll move on to page 3, which is the next page, which is the budget summary for all funds.
I do have a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that you have a 98% collection rate for the taxes. What is our history? Show.
98%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
98 to 90, well, actually 99%. It's a little bit higher. So we're going to stick to 98% every year. We budget at 98%, and we collect just about roughly that amount.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. On page 3, the budget summary lists all funds by funding source. I would like to point out to you, in the top portion of the page, we have the subtotal for the general fund. The total budgeted revenues equals the total appropriations, giving the district a balanced budget. The general fund does have some transfers out to the proprietary funds to cover the proprietary funds excess appropriations. I'd also like to point out below that is a subtotal for ESSER funds in the amount of $26,970,000. I'd just like to know we moved, those are just total salaries, we moved those salaries out of general fund so ESSER funds can pay for it. Once ESSER funds are exhausted, these expenses will revert back to the general fund. Any questions on that page?
I don't see on this page what the fund balance is for the district.
The fund balance is not reflected, but I did do an estimated fund balance amount before we came to tonight's board meeting, and it's roughly going to end up between $96 million and $101 million. Still need some expenses to be posted, not done yet. On page 4 is the appropriations by function. Same totals as the previous page, but these are broken down by the general fund, special revenue funds, and the debt service fund. As you can see in the middle of the page, the majority of the appropriations are on function 11, instruction, at about $176 million. On the following page, page 5, is a pie chart of the breakdown of the revenues that the district receives. As you can see, almost 64% of the revenues are from the state. It's that red whole portion that's there, followed by the federal funds that's in the green portion of about $91 million. The state revenues is about $233 million. On page 6 is also a pie chart of the appropriations by function for governmental funds. Again, I'd like to point out that the 52.3% is instruction-related appropriations. As you can see, it's about $191 million. More than 50%, 52.3%. On the following page, we have the, which is page 7, we have the appropriations by object. Again, same numbers, it didn't change, it's just a different way of looking at it. And as you can see in the middle of the page, the payroll services constitute the majority of our expenses. Well, it is the majority of $277 million. All payroll-related costs. And on page 8, we have a pie chart of the appropriations by object for the general fund. As you can see, the majority of that pie is 78.6%, or $224 million. And those are payroll-related costs that take up the majority of that portion. And then we have, which you've seen before, On prior budget meetings, the average daily attendance / membership historical trend with projections. And our projections for next year is going to be 21,588. Any questions on that, sir?
No, I would like to make some comments on it.
Yes, sir.
I think that it's clear to me and to all of us who are here looking at these numbers that our enrollment is decreasing, as you can see. So we are at 24,000 this year, 24,605, but of those, we only had 19,531 as average daily attendance. As a district, we're only getting funding for the 19,531 students. So we're projecting a budget that says that we're going to have enrolled in our schools for ADA purposes about 2,000 students more than what we had this last year. And I'll hold it at that because you're going to have, I think, other things to come up, and then I'll add to it. But that to me is alarming that we would be expecting another 2,000 students over what we had this year to be attending on a daily basis.
This number right here of the 19,000, and yes, you are correct, sir. The 19,531 was before the state came in and did an average study on our district or around the state. And so that average did go up to about 20,500 or 600. And so this number was prior to that state changing that average up to our favor.
Correct, but we still are making a budget on 21,500.
Yes.
That's what we're basing it on. So it does say to all of us that we've got to do everything possible to make sure that that happens. Otherwise, there's a shortfall.
Yes, sir. You are correct. And on the next slide, we have a snapshot of the PIMS for our student-staff ratio. And on year 21-22, our student-to-staff ratio is 5.94. Do we have any questions on this slide? I think you've seen this slide before in our budget presentations, and as we can see, we're trying to move that. The student-staff ratio should be around at 7%, and we're at just right below 6%.
Just to highlight, and then I think we'll say some more later.
Okay.
But when we look at the enrollment, that again, as the previous chart, we have been decreasing. No, you can keep it on the one we were in.
Yes, sir.
And you can see what the numbers look like, but then look at the number of students enrolled versus what happens with student enrollment, and then compare that to what happens with staff in
Yes.
terms of numbers.
Correct.
Particularly when we're looking at teachers and non-teachers. So that as we move forward, and I'll say more on it, we're going to have to take a look at what has occurred in our enrollment, particularly from 2016-17 to current, and the impact that has on our budget going forward.
On your previous slide, regardless that the state gave us a little opportunity to balance out with the ADA, reality remains that we had only 19,531 ADA. That was the ADA that we had without any adjustment made by the state,
That's
correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So that's why we are concerned, and we were telling Dr. Sines that we will have to, La Joya ISD will have to do things very differently from the Student Services Department, because every activity that we do has to ensure that we get the kids in school. All the other activities may have to be put on hold. The idea is to bring every single child that's enrolled to school, besides getting the kids to enroll. I mean, that's number one. But the ones who are enrolled, getting them, because in reality, we did have an ADA of 19,531. And that's why we're worried that even though we had an increase based on the adjustment that was made, that we won't be able to reach the numbers where we have projected the budget at.
Great. Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments? If none, that concludes my presentation.
The only other
Okay.
comment I wanted to make, Mr. Garza, was, and you did a good job of summarizing the raises that the staff will get. And I just wanted to clarify that the retention, the 2,500 retention stipend that employees will receive, all employees will receive,
All employees.
will be $1,250 in August and $1,250 in December. And this will be the only so-called bonus, because some people like to call it that, but it's a retention stipend to be paid when school starts in August and to be paid in December. I just want that clarified so that as we move forward, we understand exactly where we're at, and at the same time, that our staff understands those last two slides that you put up, that every single department be aware that all of us are going to have to work diligently to make sure that kids come to school. Because if they don't come to school, it'll result in other consequences. And I think Dr. Zamora was going to add to that.
And I would like to comment on, well, I've started making my comments regarding the impact that this enrollment has on our budget. And I had forwarded it, I don't know if you have set it up to where you can project it on the screen, sir, the board policy, CEA legal.
Did you give it to me?
CEA, you said?
Yes.
Was that legal?
Yes. And I think my pointing out the decrease in enrollment was for the purpose of me bringing this up. I know this is a sensitive topic, but I'm going to ask our administration that we seriously consider declaring a state of financial exigency for the district, meaning that the financial position of the district as a whole is such that the financial resources of the district are insufficient to support existing academic programs, so the district is unable to finance the full compensation for the current or succeeding fiscal years. And declaring a financial exigency is possible under one of the following conditions, and I'm looking at number 2 as being the reason. We have had a decline in enrollment by more than 10% over the past 5 years. Our enrollment in 2017-2018 was 28,788 students. This is enrollment, not ADA. And in 2021-2022, taking those numbers that you just shared with us, it was 24,163, a decrease of 4,625 students, or about 16%. If we look at a basic allotment of about 6,100 students per student, or dollars per student, and we multiply that out times the 4,600 students, we're looking at about $28 million. So we really have to do everything we can to get our enrollment where it needs to be. And also, you also picked my concern even more when you pointed out how the ESSER funds are being also used to fund salaries. So given those two points there, the matter of decrease in enrollment and the use of the ESSER funds to balance the budget to pay for salaries, I think that it would be appropriate for us to consider ourselves being in a financial exigency position, and ask our superintendent, Dr. Saenz, if she can prepare for us a plan for moving forward in being prepared for the coming year. I don't know if other members of the board would want to comment, but those are my points that I wanted to make at this time.
Just that we more than qualify because we're more than 10%. What was the percentage?
I have 16%.
Yeah, so our enrollment has declined by 16%, so definitely number 2 just says more than 10%, and we've seen a decline year after year after year.
But I think we're at a time where we can plan and hopefully plan well and ensure that as we move forward, we treat, that we work with everyone in a fair manner, that we look at ways that if this does not happen, that we do not need to do it, great. But I think it's always better to be prepared than to procrastinate later on.
Thank you, Dr. Zamora, and we will begin to prepare for that. But I think it underscores, and Dr. Benavides mentioned that it is all of our responsibility to make sure that kids are in school every day. And it will not just be up to the principals and teachers, but central office staff. That will be a major goal, that we will all need to work to make sure that our ADA is at 21,500 or higher. And of course, we need to work on our enrollment, but the kids that are enrolled need to be in school every day.
So Mr. Trevino,
No, it's Ben.
Ben, sorry. Sorry, Ben.
It's okay.
He's talking about me. He's watching me right now. What happens just because 2 years ago we budgeted for a certain number and then it came to haunt us, right? So now we're budgeting on 21.5. What happens if we don't meet that goal? How much money are we off? We're already talking about a hole that we're in with our district. What's going to be some repercussions if we don't meet that goal?
Earlier, Dr. Simona asked about the fund balance. So our fund balance this coming year is projected to go down about $12 million. We ended it last year at 111 million. This year we're probably going to be at about 99, between 96 to 101. I haven't finished the calculations because there's still numbers coming in. I still got to do some accruals for payroll and so forth to get my final balance to see where we're at. But when we don't meet those projections, our fund balance gets reduced even further and further and further. And so we can't go below a certain point of 3 months of operations. So we're not at that point, we're far from it, but it could lead to that. That's the potential.
For example, if we don't get the enrollment and we would have to take the 26, if nothing is done, and we would have to take the 26 million of that was used to fund positions from ESSER, then that would definitely deplete our fund balance drastically in a year.
Correct. It would have a drastic impact.
And I asked about the tax rate, collection rate, because if we don't get to the 98%, we also get less money from the state. So even though we have set a tax rate, if the taxes are not collected, we only get money based on what we get collected. So that also impacts the overall revenues.
The good thing with that is that we've been pretty consistent in the collection.
Yes.
I know times are difficult, so that's something that, may hinder that success rate that we've had. But I know they've been pretty consistent.
Yes, ma'am.
Apologies.
Any other comments from any of the board members or anyone? A public hearing allows for members of the audience to ask any questions and have input into our district budget. So at this point, I would like to give anyone who has any comments or questions the opportunity to do so at this time. If there are no comments or questions, Mr. Garza, for your first presentation, you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Jaime Lopez. He was a big factor in the budget process as well. And of course, all our finance staff back in the old business office. They did a tremendous job, and we finally we got through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you.
Commendations to all of you, including Mr. Trevino, who's now gone, but commendations to all the business office staff. He's here in spirit because SP's calling his name. But anyway, thank you so much. I'd like to adjourn this hearing at 6:06 p.m. Because our meeting is scheduled at 6 o'clock, we're going to proceed with our board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. Roll call.
Nereida Cantu, present.
SP Ochoa, present.
There's someone.
Roberto Zamora, present.
Alda Benavides present. Dr. Science, I declare a quorum.
Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any, thank you, Dr. Science, any public comments?
We have no public comments.
If there are no public comments, we'll move to item number 5, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion has been made and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 6, superintendent's report. Dr. Science?
Thank you, Dr. Benavides. We have a recognition for the superintendent's report. So, Dr. Benavides and Ms. Ochoa, if you could please help us give this award. And we have Mr. Raul Gonzalez, our transportation director, who will present the award. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr.
And we
Sainz.
have, yes, thank you. Recognition of La Jolla Independent School District bus drivers who competed at the state road EO.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Sainz, Superintendent of Schools, administration team, and distinguished guests. On April 9th, the La Jolla ISD Transportation Department hosted the regional rodeo. It was put together by Mr. Jolla and some of our staff members, and we had an amazing turnout, so thank you, Mr. Lanis. We had drivers from across the Rio Grande Valley competing in the transit and conventional bus categories. The competition encompassed a written test and driving through a series of obstacles. At the end of the day, the La Jolla ISD drivers took 3 out of the 6 trophies home. In the conventional categories, Ms. Esmeralda Segura took 3rd place. In the transit category, Mr. Alejandro Segura took 3rd place and Mr. Rudy Montes took 1st place. With these qualifications, these 3 drivers made it to state competition. Mr. and Mrs. Segura and Mr. Montes represented La Jolla ISD at Mansfield, Texas on June 11th. Mr. Rudy Montes managed to bring home the 1st place in the transit category. At this time, we would like to recognize them for their outstanding performance and for helping keep the tradition going for La Jolla ISD drivers who have placed in bus rodeo competitions since the 1980s. So, thank you. At this time, if I could have Ms. Esmeralda Segura come forward. Thank you, Mr. Segura. I would like to ask Mr. Alejandro Segura's daughter to come over here and receive his certificate. He is bringing a group of students from STC right now, so he couldn't make it. Okay, so, could you keep joining us? Mr. and Mrs. Segura are drivers at transportation number 2. Mr. Rudy Montes, first place in state in the transit category.
Wow.
He would be advancing to nationals, but nationals has been canceled for COVID reasons. So, Mr. Montes, thank you for your outstanding performance.
Congratulations to our amazing bus drivers.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Sainz, for this opportunity. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. That concludes the superintendent's report, Dr. Benavides.
Thank you, Dr. Sainz. We'll move to our 2 discussion items. The first discussion item is the 2022 preliminary STAR performance data.
Good evening, Madam Board President, Dr. Benavides, Board of Trustees, Dr. Sainz, Administration, La Joya ISD community. Today we'll be sharing with you the 2022 STAR preliminary grade 3 to 8 and end of course performance data. We will begin with elementary reading. In this slide, we have aggregated all of our elementary reading tests, and our spring 2022 preliminary STAR top reading performer is Lloyd Benson Elementary. Please note that reading as a district increased by 15 percentage points in 2022 as compared to 2021.
That's wonderful. Yes.
Our spring preliminary STAR top math performer is Ibi Reina Elementary. Math, if you remember, was our area of priority. Thanks to the just-in-time interventions and the attention to this subject received, as a district, math increased 29 percentage points as compared to 2021.
Ooh.
Our spring preliminary STAR top science performer is again Ibi Reina Elementary. In the area of science, as a district, we increased 27 percentage points as compared to 2021.
Very good.
Our spring 2022 preliminary top reading performer is Memorial Middle School. Reading at the middle school level increased by 23 percentage points as compared to 2021.
Wow.
Our spring 2022 preliminary STAR top math performer is Ann Richards Middle School. Math at the middle school level increased 37 percentage points as compared to 2021. Our spring preliminary STAR top science performer is again Ann Richards Middle School. We increased 27 percentage points in the area of science in the middle school level. Our spring preliminary STAR top social studies performer is Irene Garcia Middle School. Social studies at the middle school level increased 28 percentage points as compared to 2021.
Wonderful. Can you repeat again what the percentage point increase was for reading at the middle school?
Yes, Doctor. For reading? Yes, Dr. Benavides. 23 percentage points for reading.
Thank you.
Our spring preliminary STAR top English 1 end of course performer is Salinas STEM Early College High School. Our spring preliminary star top English 2 end of course performer is Jimmy Carter Early College High School.
Mr. Duque, did we skip the
I was gonna
middle
say.
school algebra 1?
The algebra
track?
one, I believe it was not included in the PowerPoint
Oh, okay,
presentation.
because we
Dr.
have it in
Sainz.
our binder.
My
Yeah, and
apologies.
it increased by 14%, by the way.
Yes.
Yes. So that was great.
That's great. Our spring preliminary star top Algebra 1 end of course performer is Jimmy Carter Early College High School. Algebra 1 at the high school level increased 14 percentage points as compared to 2021. Our spring preliminary star top biology end of course performer is Salinas STEM Early College High School. And our spring preliminary top U.S. history end of course performer is Jimmy Carter Early College High School. In the area of U.S. history, we increased 2 percentage points. Finally, the Office of Curriculum and Evaluation would like to present the 2022 preliminary district and campus accountability projections and letter grades. A copy of this report has been provided to you in the blue file folder.
Thank you, I've been dying for this.
As compared to 2019, when La Jolla ISD had 8 A-rated campuses, 26 B-rated campuses, and 4 C-rated campuses, we are projecting that in 2022, we will have 11 A-rated campuses, 24 B-rated campuses, 1 C-rated campus, and 1 D-rated campus. It should also be noted that we are working closely with multiple departments to ensure that we account for all of our students in this 2022 accountability cycle. The data is still pending some elements, which could increase or decrease our projections by plus or minus 2 percentage points. But we will make sure that every student that was assessed at La Jolla ISD during the 2022 administrations is accounted for, and we receive credit for each one of those students.
And I think the reason for that, Mr. Duque, you might want to speak more on, is because most of our kids did take online tests and the data is lagging for some students.
That's correct, Dr. Sain. We recently received, as early as Monday afternoon, I believe, the final data file for grades 3 to 8. With the transition to online testing, we've been able to receive our data fairly quickly. However, the state contractor, Cambium Assessment Inc., did have some delays in reporting some of our data. So that's one of the reasons that these projections are still very preliminary. Another reason that these projections are preliminary is any student that was not assessed at La Jolla ISD, we cannot account for growth, which is domain 2A. So we're still pending growth for some of our students that tested in other districts outside of La Jolla ISD in 2021. We're still waiting for some of our accelerated testers. These are our algebra track kids that take Algebra 1 and of course in 8th grade. Within the new system, they are accounted for under domain 3, our federal targets. We will have to take their ACT performance and embed it within the state's accountability system. So we're still pending 1 year's worth of data for our ACT testers. So TEA has confirmed a list of about 399 students, of which 159 students have been matched to ACT assessments. And we're still pending the 21-22 ACT data that should be coming up here in about August. At the beginning of August, we'll receive all those student listings.
I know you touched on the approach, but I also noticed that everyone, pretty much every campus, pretty much, like 98% overall, increase in their master's area too, which was dynamic, which really helped. And I also noticed that for the most part, across primary and secondary, everybody increased pretty much. Like they were looking at their selves and like their own competition, you know, they surpassed that. I only saw one area in secondary that, you know, needs some support there, and I know that we as a district will support
Yes, ma'am.
those
Yes.
teachers.
And speaking of support, I would like to see what kind of support using ESSER funds that we can provide for the schools on 107, because I know that they've always needed that extra support. And just looking at some of the performance, I'm not going to mention schools, but I think that it's evident that they need extra support. And this is the year that, I mean, we have funds to address the learning loss of students, and so this is a perfect opportunity to offer them that support, additional support that is needed. So, Mr. Munoz, if you'll check with your staff to make sure that they have what they need, so that teachers don't spend time worrying about resources, but are just worried about teaching and making sure that they deliver great lessons. And I know with the changes that are being made in central office, you may be short-staffed and your staff will need to be stretched a little further, but I think that you have excellent staff in CNI, and we need to listen to them and as they visit with the schools to see what else is needed so that we can get those schools up to par.
Thank you, Ms. Ochoa, and thank you, Dr. Benavides. We will be working and setting goals. I know our principals and our teachers work really hard. We made really, really good gains. However, we still have gaps to fill, and we will be working on those acceleration plans with our principals so that all of our kids make up the COVID-19 gap. And like I said, our principals worked very hard, so did our teachers. We appreciate everything that they did, and we will continue to work to further close the gaps.
Yeah, I want to stress that because they're trying to create a miracle in 2 years, in a year, face to face. And I know that several of our coordinators are present here, and so I want to commend you all for placing those resources in the hands of our teachers. So thank you, because I know there's very long hours that you put in doing that for our teachers and our administrators too. So thank you to all. And yes, we do need work, but I was just really excited because 2 years loss in 1 year, and looking at these scores, how much increase there was, we did create miracles here at La Joya ISD. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ochoa.
Lastly, if I may, Dr. Saenz, I'd like to publicly thank our administration, our school board. With your support, we were able to transition 95% of our students to online testing this school year, a full year ahead of TEA's expectation of 100% online testing in 2023. So my office would like to thank you all publicly for the support that you all provided us. Thank you.
And I'm glad you did, because I was going to say that at the end, that, you know, in Spanish we say, no hay mal que por bien no venga. And so it was perfect that, you know, you got to look at the bright side, and COVID did help us with that. And our kids were very well adjusted to being able to do an online test. And we're ahead of the game. So thank you for bringing that up, because that is very important. Our kids did great, and our teachers did great to make sure that they got all their kids online. So that was good.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Duque, to you and all your team for the work that you did in preparing the data for us. Appreciate your work. Next item is discussion update of La Joya ISD construction projects. Welcome, Mr. Villarreal.
Thank you. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Saenz, members of the board, and community. Thank you. At this time, I will be giving a brief update on our construction projects, including our ESSER-funded projects. The first project is the Juarez-Lincoln Drainage Project. This project has been completed, and the contractor is just finalizing minor punch list items. Once the punch list items have been completed, we will bring the final pay application for your approval. This project consisted of drainage improvements needed to drain the south side of Juarez-Lincoln High School. This was done through new storm drain piping, inlet structures, drainage ditch channeling, and regrading drainage areas. The engineer is M2 Engineers, and the contractor is G&G Contractors. The next project is the softball and baseball complex bleachers. The engineer has completed the construction documents for the permanent bleacher installation. This project will go out for quotes through our purchasing cooperatives in June this month. Once the quotes have been received, the ranking committee will evaluate the bidders and submit the highest ranked firm for board consideration. This project will consist of installing new permanent bleachers with press box at both baseball and softball fields. Engineers Isaguirre Engineering, and we do not have a contractor yet. Next project is the Guillermo Flores and Leo Elementary sanitary sewer improvements. Contractor has been issued a notice to proceed and material has been ordered. Once material arrives, the contractor will start mobilizing equipment and setting up staging areas. This project will consist of installing proposed sanitary sewer manholes, sanitary sewer lines and service laterals at Leo Elementary and Flores. These connections will ultimately flow and connect to an existing sanitary sewer system that is located along the west side of FM 492 or Goodwin Road. Additionally, the project scope includes decommissioning of the existing sanitary sewer infrastructures, such as manholes, lines and lift stations at both Leo and Flores. Engineers M2 Engineering, contractor is G&G Contractors. For the canopy project, we did split this project in 3 phases. Each phase has a different engineer. And the first 2 phases are at the same stage or process. The engineer has completed the updated construction documents and are in the process of advertising for bid solicitations. We are scheduled to open bids on July 13th of this year. Highest ranked bidder will then be taken for board consideration on the next regular scheduled board meeting. And that is the case for phase 1, which is M2 Engineering, and phase 2, which is Isaguirre Engineering. For phase 3, it's Hinojosa Engineering, and the engineer did complete the plans and specs, and bids were actually received already on June 14th. But in order to provide the best value to the district, we will have to update the specifications and rebid this project. And the engineer for this project is Hinojosa Engineering.
What will the timeline be for this project if we're going, I know we have an agenda item to reject the bids and rebid, so what will the timeline be?
If we rebid, we are looking at possibly another month for this phase 3. For phase 1 and 2, we are receiving bids, like I said, in July when we get back from the break. And then we usually get 2 board meetings to get the contractor on board. For this particular phase, if we reject the bid and rebid, I anticipate maybe like another extra month.
We'll be a month behind.
Month behind, yes.
Thank you.
And the reason we are rejecting? Or what are
I
some
believe that's one of the board agenda items.
Yes, so We did receive only one bid for this project,
We need to wait.
and it was a little bit over budget.
Can you wait until we get to that item first?
Yes.
Yes.
We can't discuss it right now. Wait until we.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz.
So the next item is the playsets. We also split the playsets in 3 phases. Phase 1, 2, and 3 with 3 different engineers. All 3 phases are at the same stage, where the design and specifications will be completed by the end of this month. And we will request quotes, solicitations in July. And once the committee finalizes the evaluation matrix, we will take the highest ranked bidder for board consideration. Phase 1, engineer is M2 Engineering. Phase 2 is Isaguirre Engineering. And phase 3 is Hinojosa Engineering. Moving on to the ESSER HVAC project. For this one, we split this project in 2 phases. First phase included the 10 schools that we put priority on. And out of those 10 schools, we did get 3 engineers to help us with the design and specifications. So for phase 1 under Ethos Engineering, he's working on JFK Elementary, Tabasco Elementary, and Lincoln Building. For JFK and Tabasco, the engineer has completed the construction documents for this project, and bids were received on March 29th. Notice to proceed was issued June 2nd. This project will consist of converting the fresh air, the source of fresh air to classrooms from regular DX to chill water units. A central cooling plant with new air-cooled chillers at the water pumps will be constructed along with new HVAC equipment serving the library, cafeteria, and gymnasium. This project is scheduled to be completed by August of 2023. The next project under Ethos Engineering is Lincoln Building. The engineer has completed the construction documents for this project. Bids were received April 21st, and highest ranked bidder was approved on May 25th, 2022. Once a contract is executed, a notice to proceed will be issued, and the contractor will then commence with its construction. The project consists of replacing 2 air-cooled chillers, including all electrical and plumbing scope of work. The contractor for the Lincoln Building is Carrier, and the contractor for the JFK and Tabasco is CAHS. The next engineer is Sigma Engineering, or Sigma Engineers, excuse me. They have Benson Elementary, Camarena Elementary, and Peña Elementary. For Benson and Camarena, and the reason we put these together is because they have the same scope of work. So just to make it easier, we put these together. For this project, the engineer has completed the documents and bids were received on May 12th, 2022. The highest ranked firm was approved by the board on June 8th. This project consists of replacing 2 140-ton air-cooled chillers with new branch piping, new isolation valves, and chilled water pumps. We're also replacing 1 air handler that serves the gym. And in addition, we will have new direct digital controls that serves the HVAC equipment for the entire school. This project is scheduled to be completed by June 2023, given the current lead times on the equipment. Contractor for this project is Carrier. The next school under Sigma Engineers is Peña Elementary. The engineer will have construction documents completed by July 2022. We will then proceed in advertising and receiving bids by the end of August. And the ranking committee will then evaluate the rank all qualified bidders. And the highest ranked bidder will be taken for board consideration, hopefully by September. The next engineer is MEP Engineering. Under MEP, we have Chavez and Memorial Middle School grouped together. For this particular project, the engineer has completed the construction documents and will be receiving bids on July 14th, 2022. We will then proceed in evaluating and ranking all qualified bidders. The highest ranked bidder will be taken for board consideration in July, the board meeting in July. This project consists of replacing regular DX units at the admin, fine arts, and cafeteria buildings with air-cooled chillers. And at Memorial, we are also adding the gymnasium. For La Jolla High School, the engineer will have construction documents completed by the end of July. We will then proceed in advertising and receiving bids by the end of August 2022. The committee will then evaluate and rank all qualified bidders, and the highest ranked bidder will then be taken for board consideration. And the last school under the Phase 1 and under MEP Engineering is Garza Elementary. The engineer will have construction documents completed by the end of August 2022. We will then proceed in advertising and receiving bids by the end of September. The committee will then evaluate and rank all qualified bidders. The highest ranked bidder will then be taken for board consideration. The next project is the HVAC project Phase 2. So under Phase 2, we included the rest of our campuses and miscellaneous buildings. So this includes 11 campuses and 7 buildings. Out of those campuses and buildings, we did split up in 4 different engineers to help us with the design documents. So Ethos will have Hope Academy, West Academy, Performing Arts Center, Jimmy Carter High School, and West Academy Gym. Sigma Engineers will have Zapata Elementary and Juarez Lincoln High School. MEP Engineering will have Sam Fordyce Elementary, the Wellness Gym, Nelly Administration Building, the Business Office, Transportation 1 and 2, and Natatorium. And DBR Inc. will have Clinton Elementary, E.B. Reina Elementary, Escandon Elementary, and J.D. Salinas. For this phase, the engineers were approved at the April 13th board meeting of this year. Construction documents are expected to be completed by the end of December, and the estimated project completion timeline is the end of 2024 for Phase 2. Lastly, we have the La Jolla Stadium scoreboard upgrades. The engineer for this project was approved by the board on May 11th, 2022. The engineer has completed the construction documents, and requests for quotations have been sent through our purchasing cooperatives. Once the quotations have been received, which they actually were received today, the ranking committee will evaluate all bidders and submit highest ranked firm for board consideration. This project will consist of installing new electronic scoreboard, structural steel, concrete piers, new electrical and telecommunication service, and video board. The engineer for this project is Sigma Engineering. And that concludes my presentation, but I did want to add that given the situation that we have right now with inflation, with supply and demand, with labor shortages, we are experiencing longer than normal lead times on this equipment. And it is having an impact on the completion of the project. So we're hoping that things can normalize a bit so we can complete this project sooner than later. Any questions?
I was just going to say, based on what you just said, because of the delays, will the scoreboard be ready if we're not going, if you already received the bids today, but we're not going to meet until the end of July, then you won't be ready by August. I don't think you would.
No, we're anticipating I would say about 3 months to complete, but we are going to install it on the north end of the stadium. So we will be using the current scoreboard for the first few games while they install the new one on the north side.
I thought we were afraid that the new one, that the old one's not going to work. That's the whole reason for doing the new one.
It is working. I believe there was some issues with the video and the audio, and I mean it was just, I guess, needing replacing already. I don't know if coach is here that can explain a little bit on that, but that is a plan in order for us to at least have some games there at the beginning of the year, is to have the stadium there available. The scoreboard on the south side, and then install the new one on the north side.
Will having an emergency meeting help any to get the work done?
It will. It will. And I believe if we do the ranking, we can probably start doing the ranking tomorrow. We can have everything ready by July, the first week of July.
We'll notify you. Let's see, do the ranking tomorrow, and then we can schedule if we're ready as soon as possible.
Sure.
Again, as discussed in the facilities committee, just even though the ESSER HVAC phase 2, just make sure that the campuses come first, and all the other facilities are second.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Villarreal? Thank you, Mr. Villarreal, for your thorough presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Does any board member want to pull any consent agenda item out? If no one wants to pull an agenda item out, I'll need a motion for consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa for consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Dr. Zamora, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Under Business and Finance, number 1, approval of application for payment for engineering fees, number 1, to oversee the La Jolla ISD ESSER funds canopy structures phase 3.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 2, under Business and Finance, approval of proposal submitted by engineering firm to oversee the La Jolla ISD Juarez Lincoln High School baseball and softball bleachers.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Number 3, approval of proposal submitted by architect firm to oversee the La Jolla ISD High School roof renovations project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Zamora. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Number 4, rejection of competitive sealed proposal received for La Jolla ISD ESSER funds canopy structures 3 project. Do I have a motion?
This is the line item that Dr. Cantu and myself had questions on the rejection.
We'll need a motion and then we can discuss.
So moved to discuss.
Okay. Ms. Ochoa, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second has been made that will open up for discussion. Well, since a motion and a second was made to discuss, all those in favor to have this discussion item say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so we don't do anything out of line. Okay, then let's open the discussion.
Yes, so the reason that we are rejecting and proposing to rebid, again, is to create more competition. We did get one bid for this project. It was a little bit over budget that we anticipated. So we were talking to the engineer, and one of the things that he says stopped some contractors from bidding is that they had to guarantee the bid for 90 days. That's what the engineer had in his specifications. We usually do 30 to 60 days. So a lot of these bonding companies, especially for smaller companies, did not want to guarantee their bid for 90 days. So he's saying that if we change that and we move it to about 45 days, that we should have more contractors bid on this project, which will stimulate more competition and hopefully we get better pricing.
Also, I had understood that it was 10 months out, 10 months more than what you all had anticipated the
Yes.
project to take?
Yes, we submitted, or we asked that if they can do it in 90 days or for them to submit the number of days they can do it on. So this particular company submitted, I believe it was like 280 days to complete. So it's about 10 months.
So
That's
within
fine.
the contracts that we have, do we have penalty clauses if they do not complete within timelines?
Yes, there's some terms there in the contract that if they do not complete in time, they have to, pay some fees.
Thank you.
And because we're in a timeline also with the ESSER funds, I know that's important that we stick to the timelines as much as possible, despite delays and other things that are coming up.
That's fine. So move on your recommendation to reject.
Motion has been made to reject. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 5, approval of allocation for 2023 assessments for the La Jolla Independent School District. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made by Dr. Cantu, second by Ms. Ochoa. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Number 6, approval of budget amendment 2022-06.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Number 7, approval of the 2022-2023 La Jolla ISD operating budget.
So moved.
Do I have a motion? Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu.
Would it be appropriate to say at this time what I had been saying earlier about the policy on creating an exigency plan, a financial exigency?
There's discussion, Dr. Samoa, you can go ahead and mention, I think what you had brought forth in the public hearing regarding I think the reference to the CAA legal. So as soon as it's open for discussion, if y'all can talk about it under the operating budget.
Well, we have a motion. Can we have that motion for discussion? Can you restate your motion?
Yes, I rescind my motion to discuss.
A second? Okay, so we'll open it for discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we're now discussing the 2022-2023 La Jolla ISD operating budget.
I just wanted to make the point that I had made earlier.
Doctor, can you get a little closer, sir? I can't hear.
I just wanted to reiterate what I had said earlier in the budget hearing, so that we would get the district to declare a financial exigency as per policy, I think it was CEA, and that we would request from our administration that they prepare for a review and approval, then for submission to TEA. I believe it goes to TEA, that the plan would be submitted also for review there. But that's just a comment regarding the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zamora.
And I just wanted to make the same comment that I made, is that all staff members will get their 2% increase and the 2.5% for teachers, but that there will be a one-time retention stipend to be paid in August. Half of it in August, $1,250, and half of it in December.
The only thing that I want to add to the board is, I think the comment by Dr. Zamora on what you referenced on the CA legal, et cetera, would be through a resolution.
Correct.
But in the discussion with administration and the board, if that resolution and the language, et cetera, we can work with the board.
And I think we could get it at our next board meeting, but in the meantime, what we've done is brought it
Whatever
to
the direction
attention.
is from the board and from the administration, we can get that done and the language put together, referencing the provision that you mentioned on the policies.
Okay, so when is our next board meeting? Do we have one in,
We have a meeting on July the 27th.
so that we could have then that resolution prepared for us
Yes.
for that time, that we can consider it at that time?
We'll start getting the language together and then work with the administration regarding that and then see what would need to be done if there's additional information that's needed.
Right, so I would recommend that you work with our legal counsel.
Yes.
as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Zamora.
Any other comments or any other points of discussion? If there are no other comments, I'd like to have a motion to approve the La Jolla ISD operating budget for 2022-2023.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa, second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Number 8, approval of reclassification of restricted fund balance construction to unassigned fund balance.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second? I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I have a question because I just don't see any numbers, so just what's,
Can you clarify, Mr. Garza, what that item is for?
I think you need to, yeah.
that my agenda item just has an A and zero, so.
Yes, there's zeros. What's not presented is what was there before. Before, there was about $5 million in construction that was assigned or restricted to be used for construction items that were from prior years' settlements with insurance companies. So all those construction items were complete. We had a balance of $5 million, so we're moving it out of the restricted amount into our regular fund balance.
So what we are approving then is the moving of $5 million?
We're moving it from restricted to unrestricted.
Okay, so I think that we need to add that to our motion because that is not stated here.
What
in
I
the one
think,
that I have anyway.
but what we're doing here is we're just saying, okay, our restricted fund balance, we're going to leave it at zero. So that's going to tell us to move that amount of money to the unrestricted account.
Okay, we understand that, but it's not in black and white. That's
It's,
all
yeah,
I'm saying.
it's just not written to clarify that.
Okay.
So if we could have a motion to include that says exactly what we're going to be doing.
As stated.
Can you say
So
that again?
just say
it again.
Mr. Garza, just
say it again and I'll repeat it.
It's, the board has to approve us from moving what was restricted of $5 million to unrestricted. So that way our restricted balance would be at zero.
So can our motion include an amendment to include that?
Can't amend right now, right?
No, it's just the way we're going to state the motion,
Well, then it,
to move $5,000 from restricted
5
in
million.
construction, 5 million,
Yes.
to unrestricted.
Correct.
So I move then that we,
Well-
do we have a motion on the floor?
we have a motion on the
Then I
floor.
would move for an amendment.
I think
to motion.
the motion would be with Mr. Garza's just clarification about making sure that it encompasses what the intention was about moving the money from the unrestricted to the restricted, and that should be able to cover it, which is what you were clarifying, right, Mr. Garza?
Yes, you're moving it from, yes.
So I think my understanding was that he went ahead and gave the language of the motion, moving the funds and taking it from the restricted to the unrestricted.
Correct.
And that motion would be on the floor, so somebody can second it, and then you can take action. It should be able to move forward the way is needed for him to move that money.
That's correct.
So I would amend
first-
a current motion if you have a current motion.
So I rescind my motion and make my motion based on the language that was stated
By
in
Mr.
front of
Garza.
us. To
So I
approve
would second
one.
that motion.
Okay. So motion has been made with a second has been provided by Dr. Zamora. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Under Instruction and Student Services, approval of submission number 4 of the 2022-2023 Texas Education of Homeless Children and Youth, a continuation grant application.
So move to approve.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 5, approval of career and technical education CTE innovative courses for the 2022-2023 school year.
So move to approve.
Motion has been made to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 6, approval of submission of the 2022-2024 Advanced Placement AP Computer Science Principles Grant application.
So move.
Second.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa, second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Human Resources, there are no items. And if there are no items, then we will move into executive session under Government Code 551.074, 551.071, and 551.072 at 6:57 p.m. We're out of executive session at 7:55.
So move to move under personnel under items 1 through 7 as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa for items 1 through 7. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Cantu. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Dr. Cantu. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ochoa. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned at 7:55.